Welcome back to Jazz Guitar Lessons. My name is Mark, and in this video we're going to cover a short review of the infamous Mick Goodrick book, The Advancing Guitarist. Yay, I believe this was first published in the 80s. It's a classic in the guitar world, and it's something that I've dug in and returned time and time again to dig more insights for the past 25 years. So let's see what's in store for you, the contents, the approach, and how you can better handle maybe discerning what you can take out of this book and how to apply it. Let's get going. Welcome to Jazz Guitar Lessons, where we help guitarists learn jazz faster, express themselves more fluently, and have fun along the way. My name is Mark, and if you're looking to learn jazz, form better practice habits, and especially if you enjoy a French accent, make sure to subscribe. Starting with a book overview, the good news, and the bad news at the same time, is that this book is not meant to be tackled from cover to cover. Some students will have a library of books on their bookshelves and tell me, hey Mark, I'm really bad, I'm terrible because I have all these books and I never actually finished one. So this is not meant to be finished. And here's the reason why. It's not designed as a method. And he's pretty upfront. The author is pretty upfront in the beginning. Mick Goodrick says, you provide the method. This is the stuff, this is the general how, the general what of music, and you can provide the how of you're going to implement in your own music. So it's a good book to dip in and out of to get nuggets of information. One of the largest impacts of this book is how he laid out the approach on working on one string at a time, meaning sort of a horizontal playing approach. And I've discussed this in another video of mine here where I just chop my strings and keep just the one. And this has been invaluable for hearing fretboard visualizations and stuff. But remember, this is not a book step by step that's going to tell you this is how you gotta put your strings and visualize the intervals and do this. He's not going to do it directly. He's going to do it via rebound and explaining all of the stuff. So looking at all the intervals across the fretboard was really useful for me, as well as visualizing intervals, knowing if you start with a single note, you can do this, you can play around and it will be a different pitch. But what if we have two notes combined? How do we address this issue of playing, for lack of better term, dyads? I don't really like that word, but saying, well, intervals. How do you address intervals on the fretboard? These two things combined, along with other stuff about harmony and drop twos and how chords move from one to another, were the really most impactful on my own playing. How about the content and the general approach of the book? So just you can be warned and also reassured by the fact that this book, the author really loves to tackle all possibilities. So that's one thing I will mention, that even if I would look at all these possibilities and 80% of them will wind up not being useful, he will still expose you to these different possibilities. So it's thorough, it's a lot, whether it's for skill developments or voicings or intervals or scales or understanding. So you can be sure that at times it will be overkill. And I mentioned also in this other book review here, the Berkeley method, which I'm like, well, volume 3 is a bit overkill according to what the outcome is. But it's good to have all of the stuff laid out in Advancing Guitarist, because this way I can think outside of the box. Maybe it's going to expose me to things I haven't thought of. And also it allows me to develop the skill of discernment. Like if I can practice anything, if I can paint anything and there's no frame, I wind up painting nothing. So by having the exposure to all of the color, the palette of color, then I can be discerning in knowing what I want to see, what I want to hear. So a bit of warning as well, the book, The Advancing Guitarist, does not cover any good old classics or standard progressions. Although that's a major caveat, because my whole teaching approach is based on let's first learn songs. This is at the bottom, the foundation of the pyramid of any, I think, worthwhile developing, aspiring jazz guitarist. Like, yeah, you gotta play the tune. This book is not meant to teach us songs and teach us more about these classic tunes, although it could be great for exploring. So it's a major caveat, but at the same time, the stuff that explored within the book, say progressions or voicings, can and should definitely be applied on standard tunes. So in summary, the contents and approach for me has been a great pick-me-up when I felt I was stuck in a rut. That is, if I already felt overwhelmed and I was drowning in different options, this is not the book that would reduce my anxiety as far as what to do next with guitar, right? So that's the warning. It's like, well, if you feel overwhelmed, this is not the book to go to for pick-me-up. It's more of a, I'm stuck in a rut, it's dry, I keep doing the same things over and over again. I may expand my own universe by spending 10, 15 minutes in this book. Guaranteed I'll find something I haven't considered yet, or haven't worked on yet, or have forgotten, and go, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. And then, of course, the rest is history. I will get on my rabbit hole and discover new ways of expressing myself. Just to give you a little taste of the introduction and the pace of the book for the contents and approach, I believed I had seen a quote from Mick Goodrick discussing Pat Metheny, saying this book, perhaps not this one, saying this book's dedicated to Pat Metheny, partially because he made it possible, but mostly because he never needed it. That's not from this one, so I'm going to read a part of the introduction just to get you in the moods here. So this is a do-it-yourself book. It's not a method book. You supply the method. You do it yourself. I may make some suggestions along the way, but point out some things that seem important or relevant. But what you do with it is entirely your own business. And towards the end of the introductions, before best wishes, he says, by itself, a book has absolutely no value. It's a dead thing. But in conjunction with a living human being who can understand, work, and grow, a book can be very useful. So I think that summarizes really the contents of this book. It sets the tone for the rest of the entire approach. Hey everyone, just a quick break here. If you're loving this episode and you want to elevate your own jazz guitar skills, reach out to us. We've guided thousands of guitarists in becoming accomplished jazzers beyond their wildest dreams. So check the link in the description or visit jazzguitarlessons.net to get started today. Okay, now back to the episode. All right, a few words about Goodrick. So Mick Goodrick is not as recognized on the international jazz scene as, say, a Pat Metheny or a John Scofield. However, if you haven't, I would recommend you check some of his music, especially while he was playing with the Gary Burton's band. Actually, at the point where young Pat Metheny joined Gary Burton, Mick was considered the veteran guitarist, and he wrote very interesting songs that are pseudo-modal ECM sounding things that I highly recommend you check out, and also look at the whole creative exploratory nature of how he tackled improvisations on songs. It was like, yes, we're going to pay tribute and homage to, say, the Charlie Christians and the West, but I think Mick really brought the guitar to another level, not only for contributions in a book like this, but in education, being a head teacher, guitar teacher at Berklee for years, but also just in the way he decided to approach jazz as an exploratory art form. So a quick perspective on learning from the Advancing Guitarist. So I know it's a lot of general mumbo-jumbo, but here I will say Mick Goodrick challenges the new is better, right? I think it's one of the fallacies and one of the common traps in jazz education. It's not always about the new stuff. So sometimes I got to do more of what I already know how to do, which I'll give you an example in one moment, or do what I'm already doing better. And we're often on a quest for looking at new voicings and new songs and new progressions and new ways to put things together. But I say Mick can go back to basics and go, I'll give you an example. What if I do more of the major scale? Yeah, I can do it on a single string, which was the thing that had a tremendous influence on me. Look at intervals within, look at how I can construct modal vamps and what kind of three-part chordal harmonies are in there. Okay, they're there, cool. Most of them sound like not too good, so cool. But what if I just look at the C major scale? You would say you learn it on one string at a time, or you learn it by simply going in a position. Fine. Have you considered that you can do a steady number of notes on a given string before moving on to the next string? Right, this is one thing that never occurred to me before I read this book, which would be I play C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, so until I run out of frets. But what if I did only two notes on a string? So I do C, D, next string E, F, next string G, A, next string B, C, right? And then I wind up going backwards towards the nut of the guitar while I go up the scale. I never considered this. Why not? Well, it's this kind of exploration that's as part of the book. So this does not fall into the new and fresher and new stuff category. It's still a major scale, but it falls into doing what I'm doing a bit more or better. And now what if we do 3 notes per string? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, right? What if I did 3 and 4 notes? What if I did 2 and 3? What if all these combinations of fingerings may not wind up really useful or part of my playing, but the sheer fact of exploring these possibilities really can open new avenues in my playing. And it did for me, and I hope it does for you as well. I think the Advancing Guitarist should be on any serious guitarist shelf. Like if you're serious about studying music, whether you want to call yourself a jazz guitarist or not, I think you should definitely look into this book and see what it can give, not just for method, but for something that can give us further explorations into the world of addressing the instrument in a really specific way, right? And my favorite aspect of this book, and it's going to be a bit silly, is for pure enjoyment. There are shorts, like unrelated thoughts at the end of the book where it's like, this didn't fit anywhere else. And some of them are jokes and considerations, and that's one of my favorite things to do away from the instrument. I can pick it up, I can look at the book and read the paragraphs and ponder. For instance, when's the last time you recorded yourself? Oh yeah, these days, back in the 80s, use a tape recorder, play along with yourself. What if you played everything you know half the tempo, twice the tempo? What if you decide not to play guitar for a week? What if you decide to play guitar for an entire week, 8 hours a day? What if? This can be a really interesting thing, and I will segue before the conclusion of this video into another set of books by Mick Goodrick, which I think are worthwhile to look at as well. Okay, going back to Mr. Mick Goodrick in a book that has no notes, no chords. It's called Factorial Rhythms, and that's really for all instruments. And it's Mick Goodrick with Mitch Hoppers, which I believe was one of his students. And it features a whole bunch of key rhythms, and they're all displaced, and they cover what we say, the entire realm of possibilities, knowing that if I have a bar of 4/4 and I decide that there's going to be 2 attacks within the bar, so 2 notes that are played, how many combinations of 2 note attacks can I have, and where do they land on what beats? So this book features basically 1 or 2 bar loops that are just a bunch of, he calls them factorial rhythms. So factorial, you can look up the definition. Say 4 factorial is 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, right? So this is good for rhythmic exploration. And again, it's in the spirit of the Advancing Guitarist because it covers the entire set of cards. I have 54 cards in a deck. It's like, how many different ways can I shuffle those? So that's the rhythmic approach. It's interesting and not very deep. It's not a classic like the Advancing Guitarist, but still, that's another good Mick Goodrick reference. Now, further along in this exploration with Mick Goodrick books, he calls himself Mr. Good Chord. Yeah. I don't think it's available anymore, but this is like a yellow pages of chords, and just very cryptically written as sequences of chords that are written just in pitches. And it's been endorsed, I believe, by Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock. So this is something he had started in Advancing Guitarist, but this lays the foundation for the entire set of chords. So think of any voicing in any open or closed position, for any or all of the modes of major, melodic, minor, harmonic, minor, in all the voicings, in all possible voice leading to any other chord in the key. So yes, all cycles. So the point is, you can open it in any page and learn something, but it's a bit overkill. I had to make myself a roadmap for the record. If you want to see this on camera, that's a roadmap of the different diatonic chords. Not my handwriting. Unfortunately, I don't write that well. And interestingly, on the cover, he says, batteries not included, some assembly required. And as if this was not enough, volume 1 is called Name That Chord. There's an entire second volume called Do Not Name That Chord, right? I got both probably 20 or so years ago. And I would say, well, don't get these books because most of the stuff you can extract it on your own. And since that's the entire deck of cards, most voicings are just not playable on the guitar, because of the amount of strings, amount of fingers and stuff. So I wouldn't say it's a good resource. It's showing you the exploratory nature of Mick Goodrick's writing. It's like, we want to see the whole deck of cards. We don't have to work on all of these things, but we can certainly explore how chords move into one another with different voicings. So if this is all above your head, that's fine. If it's too much, that's totally okay. But I wanted you to consider he's that guy that wrote the yellow pages. Ultimately, this book could be written by AI in a single prompt, going, show me all the voicings and all the scales and all the whatever, right? And just for the record, the joke with the blue one, which is do not name that chord, is that most of these chords that are tackled there are 3 notes over another one. Oh yeah, those are just 4-part voicings. Some triads, but 4-note voicings. But if I stack a triad on top of a chord, for instance, if I stack a diatonic triad, so BDF would be a B diminished triad, over a C chord. This chord does not have officially a name, say because there's not a third, there's not a clear modality and tonality to it. So the do not name that chord is tongue-in-cheek, but the whole point is most of these chords don't have a name, yet they're still diatonic structures. And at a certain point in the Advancing Guitarist, he had started to lay down these things. Let me just find the page to show you some of these nightmare possibilities. So these things, of course, not for the faint of heart. Concluding here, the Advancing Guitarist is a must, not just for a method book, and it's a journey into the depth of guitar and the intricacies of playing voicings and rhythm and playing together and exploring, right? And for me, it's been a pivotal part of my understanding. For you, how's it been? So if you've used this book or you haven't, please leave me a comment below. Ask me any questions about the content of these books that I talked about. And if you have gained any insights. Also, if you're at a point where you just want to tackle tunes, which is really what I recommend for anyone just getting started in the world of jazz or not having really amazing results with the improv or the chord melody, I'd always recommend looking back at my video here, which I put here, which is called It's Not Your Fault, which describes the exact method I take my students with. You can get this on the free community as well, right? It's on the fellowship. You can really tackle between 5 to 10 songs to get going in your jazz journey. And all in all, in the end, the Mick Goodrick stuff or any other stuff you get from a method can later be used in context to improve your vocabulary. I think that's the main takeaway. So thanks for watching, signing off, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.